Something different is happening with the Steelers. And it's not just about the wins or the trip to Ireland. There's something brewing underneath the surface of this team that might matter way more than the scoreboard. And it's this: guys who were looking like total liabilities just a couple of weeks ago, suddenly turning into real assets. That's the kind of transformation that changes a team's trajectory, not just for a game or two, but for an entire season. Now, forget all the pomp and ceremony from Dublin for a moment. Yeah, it was a cool backdrop. The atmosphere was electric. Fans went all in. But what really stood out had nothing to do with the location, and everything to do with how some of these players responded to adversity. Because when you've got players like Keanu Benton stepping up in ways nobody saw coming, that's not just a lucky break. That's growth. That's development. That's coaching. And more importantly, that's hope for what this team could still become. Let's be real. Through the first 3 games, Benton looked borderline invisible. He wasn't making any sort of impact up front, and there were legitimate questions about whether he even deserved to be in the rotation. But in Ireland, he flipped the switch. Suddenly, he was making plays, showing instincts, and becoming disruptive. That's the kind of performance that makes you stop and say, hold on, where's this been? It's not just a guy filling a role anymore. It's a guy earning a spot and making people around him better. That's gold for a team like Pittsburgh, especially when you're not exactly swimming in elite talent across the board. Same goes for Kenny Gainwell. Out of nowhere, stepping in late for Jaylen Warren and lighting it up. He looked sharp. Quick cuts, good vision, confident with the ball in his hands. The kind of performance that doesn't just make you rethink the depth chart, but the offensive playbook altogether. There's a spark there that this team needs, especially in an offense that's still finding itself. But maybe the biggest turnaround came from a Landon Roberts. This guy was all but written off. The talk wasn't just about him struggling. It was about him potentially losing his job. And when your defensive coordinator makes comments before a game that basically hint you're on thin ice, that's not noise. That's real pressure. So what does Roberts do? Leads the entire game in tackles. Puts together a performance that screams, not done yet. That's not just redemption. That's resilience. And it's the kind of thing you can build on moving forward, especially in a defense that needs a backbone in the middle. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. If those guys can flip the script mid-season, who else is next? What other pieces that looked like problems might actually become solutions? It's not a stretch to think that this trend might continue. In fact, let's talk about a few areas where that change could realistically happen, because if it does, this team's ceiling might be a lot higher than anyone expected. Let's start with the tight ends. Yeah, we know the numbers. Pat Freiermuth has just 7 catches through 4 games. That's not enough, plain and simple. Especially not for someone who was once considered one of the most promising young tight ends in the league. And look, it's not all on him. He's only been targeted 10 times. But that's part of the issue too. Why isn't he being targeted more? The offensive line is shaky, sure, but there have also been miscommunications. The chemistry with the quarterback just isn't there yet. And when that bond is missing, it shows. Routes aren't sharp. Timing's off. Opportunities disappear. But this isn't a dead end. It's a moment waiting to flip. Because here's the thing. Freiermuth's still a good player. His average yards per catch is solid. He's still moving the chains when he does get the ball. And if the Steelers can just get a bit more stability up front, maybe shift some of the protection responsibilities, or tweak the scheme just enough to create those seams in the middle, this guy could easily get back to being a reliable threat. And what about Jonas Smith? The man has barely been involved downfield. He's got 14 catches on just 16 targets. But that efficiency matters. This is someone who was a monster in Miami with yards after the catch, and he's still showing flashes of that here. 76 yards after the catch so far, and that's with minimal usage. So what happens if you actually start designing plays for him? If you stop treating him like an afterthought and start building him into the game plan, that changes everything. And maybe, just maybe, if these tight ends step it up together, Arthur Smith won't need to rely on extra linemen for protection. Maybe he won't have to get creative just to keep the quarterback standing. Maybe the offense starts to look functional. And from there, who knows? Now, let's go bigger. Let's talk about the pass defense, or more accurately, what was supposed to be the pass defense. Because remember how it was hyped up in Latrobe? Shut down corners, elite coverage, Porter stepping up, Ramsey anchoring the unit. This was supposed to be the year that Pittsburgh's secondary became elite. And yet, here we are, giving up over 260 passing yards per game. That's bottom 4 in the entire league. Not just bad, embarrassingly bad for a team that prides itself on defense. So what happened? Some of it's the matchups. Ramsey has had the toughest assignments. He's taken on the elite guys week after week. But even before his injury, the results just weren't there. He wasn't locking guys down. He wasn't flipping games with big plays. And now, with a hamstring issue expected to sideline him, the Steelers are going to have to pivot. Brandon Echols might get more run. Joey Porter Jr. should be back soon. But the system itself might need to simplify a little. Less gimmicks. Less isolation. Just let guys play. And that might be a good thing. Because when you're getting torched every week, what do you really have to lose by going back to basics? This is a secondary that still has talent, still has potential, but they need cohesion. They need roles that make sense. And most of all, they need confidence because you can see the hesitation on film. Guys not sure when to jump a route, when to pass off coverage. That stuff adds up fast. But just like Benton, just like Roberts, just like Gainwell, there's room here for redemption. And if this defense can just return to league average in the pass game, that's already a massive win. And now to the quarterback position. Not just the most scrutinized spot on the field, but arguably the one with the most room to grow. And no, this isn't a rant about stats or PFF grades. This is about how Aaron Rodgers is being used and what's being left on the table. Because if you've been watching closely, you know exactly what's going on. Rodgers is getting rid of the ball way too fast. We're talking blink-and-it-out type plays. And sure, that's by design. The offense has been structured to protect him, to mask a shaky offensive line, to avoid turnovers. But in doing that, they've neutered what Rodgers does best. This is still one of the most talented arms in football. The sidearm flicks, the deep shots, the anticipation throws. It's all still there. You saw it in Latrobe. You saw it in practice. The man hasn't lost it. He just hasn't been allowed to use it. Everything's been about safe throws, quick reads, dump-offs, slants. And that worked against Minnesota. It got the job done in Ireland. But what about over 17 games? What about when teams start sitting on the short stuff and daring you to go long? That's where Rodgers has to push it. That's where the offense needs to evolve. And it can. Because if the line holds up just a bit better, if the play action gets established, if the tight and start eating up the middle of the field, the deep stuff opens up. And when that happens, this whole thing flips. Suddenly, it's not a dink and dunk offense. It's a dangerous one with layers, one that keeps defensive coordinators up at night. And Rodgers, is still in there. Then we're not just talking about a team trying to stay afloat in the AFC North. We're talking about a legitimate playoff contender, one with a puncher's chance to make noise in January. But for that to happen, this transformation has to continue. The progress can't be a one-week wonder. It has to be part of shift and identity. And that identity starts with trust in the players, trust in the scheme, and trust that these guys can evolve as the season wears on. Because here's the truth about the NFL, nothing is static. Teams that stay the same get exposed. Teams that adapt survive. And right now, the Steelers are sitting on the edge of that line. They're not quite a finished product, but they're not a mess either. What they are is in motion, and you can feel it. The way the defense flew to the ball against Minnesota. The way the offense didn't fold when things weren't perfect. The way guys stepped into roles they weren't even expected to fill and didn't just survive, they thrived. That doesn't happen by accident. That comes from coaching, from preparation, from a locker room that hasn't checked out despite some early bumps in the road. And now the challenge is sustaining it, building on it, turning what looked like Band-Aids into permanent solutions. Because every team faces adversity, but not every team responds like this. Let's go back to that Rodgers point for a second, because it really is the fulcrum of everything. If you unlock him, this offense takes on a whole new shape. But that doesn't just mean letting him chuck it deep 20 times a game. It means creating a system where his full skill set actually matters. That's pre-snap reads. That's option routes. That's giving him a rhythm that's more than just snap and fire. and the pieces are there to do it. You've got running backs who can catch, tight ends who can block and release, a few young receivers who, while still raw, are showing flashes of becoming reliable targets. And you've got a play caller in Arthur Smith who's shown at least a willingness to try different things, even if it's not always pretty. The key now is shifting from surviving to attacking. No more calling games like you're afraid of what might go wrong. Call them with the belief that something good will happen, because it's starting to. You can't play scared and expect fireworks. At some point, you've got to light the match. Same goes for the defense. If the secondary is struggling in coverage, then manufacture pressure. Blitz more. Mix up the looks. Get creative on third down. Use the depth. Use the athleticism. And most of all, use the hunger that's clearly there. Because when guys like a Landon Roberts are fighting for their jobs and turning in top-tier performances, that's a spark. That's something you ride. Let them set the tone. And yes, getting healthier is part of the equation. When Joey Porter Jr. is fully back, this cornerback group looks very different. He's got that edge, that length, that raw ability to change a drive with one play. But again, he can't be the whole plan. The scheme has to support him. The communication has to tighten up. No more busted coverages. No more assignments missed in zone. Because giving up 260 yards through the air every single week is a fast track to a long off-season. What's crazy is how close this team is to being dangerous. Not perfect, far from it, but dangerous. And in the NFL, that's enough. If your quarterback is right, your defense is opportunistic, and your playmakers are growing into their roles, you don't need to be flawless. You just need to be capable of creating chaos, of making teams uncomfortable, of turning the fourth quarter into your territory. And when you look around the division, that's the game. The Bengals are flawed. The Browns are inconsistent. The Ravens are talented but beatable. No one's running away with anything, which means this thing is open for the taking if the Steelers can just keep pushing. And pushing means accountability. It means not being satisfied with one good week. It means holding on to that chip on your shoulder and using it. If Benton has found his groove, keep feeding him. If Gainwell's emergence opens up new personnel groupings, explore them. If the tight ends can block more reliably and catch in space, then stop hiding them and start unleashing them. What you saw in Ireland wasn't just a road win in a novelty game. It was a glimpse of what could be. A team with flaws, yes, but also with fight. A team that's still writing its story and just might be learning how to win ugly, which, by the way, is how a lot of playoff teams survive in January. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The NFL rumor mill is swirling like never before as whispers circulate that Jordan MAILATA, the so-called human wall, might be packing his bags and leaving Philadelphia for Pittsburgh. Sources close to the matter hint that the towering offensive lineman, whose size and agility have made quarterbacks breathe easier for years, is eyeing a new chapter in his career, and the Steelers could be the lucky beneficiaries. MAILATA's rise in Philly has been nothing short of meteoric. Drafted as a raw, unpolished talent, the former rugby player turned gridiron behemoth transformed himself into one of the most reliable protectors in the league. The Eagles' offensive line has been a fortress largely because of his imposing presence, but insiders suggest that a combination of contract negotiations, career ambitions, and a desire for fresh challenges may be nudging him toward Pittsburgh. Imagine the Steelers' offensive line, with MAILATA anchoring the right side. Rumors suggest the ripple effects could be seismic. Rookie quarterbacks might suddenly have more confidence in the pocket. Running backs could find lanes opening with unprecedented efficiency, and the Steelers' offensive scheme could ascend to a level that's been talked about but rarely seen. Analysts are already speculating about matchups. Teams that once pressured Pittsburgh's quarterback might now be staring down a nearly immovable force. Fans and pundits alike are divided. Some see it as a natural evolution for MAILATA, a move that could solidify his legacy as one of the most dominant linemen of his generation. Others worry about what Philadelphia stands to lose. The Eagles line has been a key component of their recent successes, and replacing MAILATA's unique combination of size, speed, and technique is no small task. Yet, the buzz persists. Whispers in locker rooms, social media speculation, and subtle hint from insiders all suggest that this story is far from over. If MAILATA does make the jump to Pittsburgh, it won't just be a trade. It could signal a tectonic shift in the AFC, changing offensive dynamics and igniting heated debates across the league. One thing is clear, wherever the human wall lands, the NFL will be watching closely, and the stakes just got higher for every team in the mix. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.